This is Battleground PA, a PennLive podcast discussing the issues that matter to Pennsylvanians and documenting the events in the Keystone State and beyond that could shape how you vote in the 2024 elections.
Hello, everyone. It's Joyce Davis back on the battleground again after a little hiatus, took a little vacation, but we're back to ready to catch up to where things stand with Pennsylvania and the rest of the nation as we look ahead to the November general election. So I, as usual, am joined by my trusty smart people here, Jeffrey Lord, who hails from the Republican side, and Rogette Harris, who is going to defend the Democrats. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Just great. Just great.
Oh, all right,
Hey,
very good.
It's May.
It is May. May is good because that means maybe the worst of the weather is behind us. We got a little rain, but at least it's warming up. So I'm good with that. But listen, let's talk. We got to start with the trial. Today was a tough day because there was somebody called Stormy testifying, and apparently it was a little seedy, the testifying. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on this? How is this, Jeffrey, how is all this resonating with Republican voters?
Well, I think there's two things going on with, frankly, neither I nor any of us have seen this kind of thing before. It is, it is kind of amazing. But I think there's two things going on. And so I'll start with number one is the legal stuff. And obviously I am not a lawyer. So, I listen to the various lawyers on different sides commentate on all of this and, very interesting. But of course, I do know something about politics, and that would be number two. And I have to say that politically, I think this is a huge mistake for Democrats. What they're doing is making him sympathetic here.
But
that all this stuff
it's not
is piling on.
Democrats that are doing this.
And
it's
what?
the law, right? It's the legal system. It's not Democrats who are doing this, right?
Well, I think the answer to that is the legal system is in the hands of Democrats, beginning with Joe Biden's Justice Department. And and people just, we're going to have an election. We've been having an election every 4 years from time immemorial. So let's get on with it. This business of prosecuting your opponent and trying to jail him and all that, that truly is third world banana republic stuff. And it's not good. And I think it's going to backfire.
Well, let's bring Rogette in here. Rogette, I'm sure you have another point of view on this one.
If she doesn't say the right thing, I'm going to have her prosecuted.
All right.
Well, Biden's still president, so I still have freedom.
That's a good retort.
But I see there's three groups of people. Of course, we have the group of Americans where this is pure entertainment. It's Trump it's another reality TV show for some people, let's be honest. We have people like Jeffrey said, Trump's base that is going to be very sympathetic and, this is going to motivate them to vote. But then you also have a group of voters that's completely disgusted. It just reminds everyone of Donald Trump and why we don't want him as president again. But I do think that there is a group of people where it's, oh, there he goes again, because it's, it's the same thing with him. It's not surprising.
Well, I can tell you, I frankly don't think it's good that the nation has to go through this nastiness. I do believe if you break the law and if there's reason to accuse you, you need to stand before a judge and a jury.
Unless you're Hillary Clinton.
Well, no, anybody should. But if they had found enough to bring her to charges, she should have been. I just think everybody, but it's a shame that a former president, or as some think a future president possibly, is on a trial where he's talking about his porn star going to bed with her. Come on, guys. That's a little bit like not what I want my children to know about American history. But
and that's where the independence. And that's where the independents will come in, because I still say Trump's base is his base. Yeah. They're not moving. We saw that with our recent primary here in Pennsylvania. His base is his base, but can he grow that? Yeah. I personally don't think he can. And this trial is a reminder to those individuals, those people in the middle, not the Jeffries and Rogettes of the world, but those in the middle as to why they're not going to vote for him again.
Yeah, well,
Because
she
they're
raises
not
a
gonna
good
want
point
him.
there. She raised a good point there, Jeffrey. It's not just the base. He can't win with only his base.
No.
He has to get the other folks,
But
right?
this is where, Joyce, I think other issues come to play that have nothing to do with this. You know, what is the
Absolutely.
price of gas? Well, how are we doing in the economy and groceries? And there's a list of those kind of things that are fairly standard that I think always apply in a presidential election year, no matter who the
Well,
candidates are.
yeah, I thought you were leading to Gaza with all the protests going on, but okay, but we'll come back to the economy. But that's the other thing we got to talk about. We haven't talked about a lot of stuff here, but what's happening with all the college campuses erupting and all of this with protests and I think even I think we got to somebody compared the protests on campuses to January 6th. Now, I think that's going a little too far, but what impact do you think these protests and all this may be having on how people are thinking about the election, Jeffrey?
Well, coincidentally, and I do believe it's a coincidence, I believe these things have erupted and they're going to wind up hurting President Biden. Um, these are all left-wing college campuses out there. And I mean, I'm astonished. If there's one thing I agree with Joe Biden on, it is that there is no room for this kind of thing. This is just totally, completely unacceptable. And what I find interesting, we're Pennsylvanians, right? And the governor of Pennsylvania is Jewish. His predecessor was Jewish. I knew fairly well Senator Arlen Specter, elected 5 times to the United States Senate. He was Jewish. All the way back when I was in college, Milton Schaap was elected and he was Jewish. So it's not like Pennsylvania has this sort of animosity to Jews. I mean, we're more than willing to elect people of the Jewish faith to public office. But I do think that all of this business on college campuses, and I haven't seen all that much about Pennsylvania campuses, maybe some at University of Pennsylvania, but nothing
Yeah, they
like.
had some there. I even got a text that they had have an encampment at Dickinson at the time. But
Oh,
Jeffrey,
really?
you're not saying that you disagree with protests, right? Protests are
No.
okay on college
You know,
campuses, right?
as somebody
You
who
don't like protests
protested,
either?
as somebody who protested in 1970, it was the end of my freshman
Did you
year.
have long hair too? Did you have
Uh,
long hair too?
Joyce, sadly, my hair would not go this way. It went this way. So I had an
Okay,
afro.
all right. Okay, all right. You'd have been a brother. Got it.
And the thing that what happened was we got to April 30th of my freshman year, you know, which was scheduled to end in early May. And President Nixon came on television and announced that he was sending American troops into Cambodia, you know, to go after the North Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, and all that kind of thing. He went off the air, and within 15 minutes, I vividly remember this, there were kids from F&M filling the quad protesting. Well, this started to build in one college around another. And then we got to May 4th, and the National Guard in Ohio shot to death 4 college kids at Kent State. Well, then all hell broke loose. And I've gone back and taken a look at this. There were 500 colleges that shut down. Franklin Marshall was one of them.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, protests on college campus is like almost a given. And so,
Yes.
what's different about this one, Rogette? I mean, why would this one be any different? And including people say some bad stuff on those during those protests, right? So, Rogette, I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Right. I think the issue is that this age group, college age group, was a big part of the president's base when he was elected in 2020. And let's not forget, the election wasn't a landslide. It was closer than we would have liked it to be. I also want to kind of correct misconception that all of these protests are being anti-Jewish. That's not true. You know, tens of thousands of Palestinians have been killed as well. So these protests, a lot of them, and we can't, you know, group all of them based on a few bad apples, which, as you know, is usually what we do. But these protests are also trying to bring awareness to those deaths as well, because overall, in their minds, they're being forgotten. And we're only focusing on the deaths that have happened the Jewish deaths that have happened. And that's why I think I said on a prior podcast that these protests are supposed to be promoting All Lives Matter. Now, are things said that are incorrect, that are wrong? Yes, I can't deny that. But they just want to bring awareness to the Palestinian lives that have been lost as well. As far as the election is concerned, do I think these individuals will vote for Trump? No, but even worse, they could stay home. And
Well, yeah,
we as
that's a
Democrats, we
good
can't
point.
afford that.
They could simply get so turned off they tune out. That's what we used to do in our day, right, Jeffrey? We tuned out, right? But I will tell you this, and I think you guys want to hear this. I received an op-ed that's going to publish probably on Saturday from a Jewish mother, conservative, who she says that she is really disturbed about what is happening in the Palestinian areas, and that she is, of course, very observant as a Jew, but she says that she also now believes that this war should stop. That it's an atrocity. I mean, she goes into great detail. I will. You check on this. Her name is Cecilia Harwit, and it's a Jewish mom's wish for Mother's Day, and that wish is that no child suffers. No child has to die, that we all ought to simply get over this war thing, Jeffrey. So, I mean, clearly I know you don't like the anti-Semitism that coming out, and none of us do, none of
Right,
us.
right.
But we also believe that all children matter. All children matter. And the suffering going on in Gaza is beyond you don't want to think about it, what's happening there, including the famine that's now been unleashed. I'm sorry, Jeffrey, go ahead.
Well, it's just, Hamas began this by invading Israel and killing little babies and beheading people and all of this kind of thing. And I mean, I'm not defending the response. I'm simply saying that when you do that kind of thing, you are going to get a response, and it's going to escalate and escalate and escalate. And that is exactly what's happened. And you need some calmer heads. I mean,
Yes.
remember in the Trump administration, and earlier in the Clinton administration, for that matter, there were great efforts made successfully to bring Arabs and Israelis together. Jared Kushner worked
and
his
there was a
butt
success
off.
at that, actually. There
And he
truly was
was
a success.
the
Yeah.
Abraham Accords and all this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember, I wasn't there. I was living in Washington at the time, but I remember very well when President Clinton had Yasser Arafat and I forget who was the prime minister of Israel at the time, but they're on a ceremony on the South Lawn to bring together some things. So it's not that this can't be done. It can be done. But you've got to have, I think, the right people who have credibility and have the ability to get things done. And I'm not at all sure at the moment that we have that.
Well, we do
I
have
hear what you're
that.
saying. The other thing that's come up with these protests, I don't. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we do have that.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was
Yeah, we
just
hear you. Go
I
ahead.
was just saying that we do have that. President Biden is well respected throughout the world. There is no respect. Going back to our first topic, we're talking about a nice way to put it, one of his former affairs that, he paid off to be quiet about. That's not going to be respected. That's not what we need. Not only is it a distraction, but it's not respected throughout the world. That's not the leadership that we need. President Biden has always been a leader in foreign affairs. That's why President Obama chose him as his running mate back in 2008. So we do have the leadership that we need to help with the help with.
Even though people on the left may not like the leadership that is being led, I mean, they still don't like
Joyce,
well, we're not going to please everyone, to be fair. We're not going to please, one thing about being in a leadership position, we all know this, you're not going to please everyone. So, you have to do what's right.
I mean, Joyce, I think you raised a very interesting point there, is that there's a real vein of opposition to President Biden that isn't coming from Republicans. It's coming from people on the far left in his own party. this whole business of antagonizing him and yelling "Genocide Joe" and all of that. I mean, I'm appalled at this, but it's not coming from a bunch of conservative Republicans, I can tell you that.
No,
And the
but
question is really, go ahead. I'm sorry, Rogette, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, but we could put that on the other side too. There's a large section of Republicans that don't want anything to do with former President Trump. There's even I've been as a Democratic Party chair, I'm even being contacted by Republicans. What can we do? We don't want him back in.
Just raises a good point there. Yeah, yes. I mean, honestly, because there is a big split. I'm getting all kinds of emails and on a regular basis from Republicans against Trump. Oh, I mean, it's increasing, which is strange. So I hear you. There are problems for both parties with the people who may not quite be on board yet. But
just the difference that I see, Joyce, is that the problem with Trump is not his policies, it's himself. Whereas the problem with Biden is his policies, and that is what gives it such, you've got all these Democrats in Michigan voting non-committed and all that kind of thing, and Democrats in places like Dearborn, Michigan. That's a policy difference, not a personality situation.
Well, we all know that politics is not a skill-based sport. People vote on personality, they vote on the person, they vote superficial. It's like
you've always railed against that. I know she runs policy, but she's right. They look at the person, the personality, right?
You and I, Jeffrey, yes, we look at policy. The average person does not. It's like a date. It takes you a while to get to know the boss. People are more interested in the superficial. That's why people on TV do well in politics, because people know that TV persona, not necessarily the person or what they stand for.
Good point. But let me move you guys on, because we could talk about this policy versus personality stuff all night. But I'm a bit concerned, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we have apparently a group of 13 conservative judges, federal judges, saying they're not going to hire Columbia University law students or undergraduates and because of if the campuses pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Now, these apparently judges appointed by Trump, and they're very conservative, but isn't that going a little too far to start boycotting a college like Columbia? And
well, I don't know that it's the college per se as it is individual graduates. And again, I'm not a lawyer, as you know, but if I'm a judge and somebody is coming to me wanting to be my law clerk, and I find out that he or she was arrested in this kind of situation, that'd give me pause before I give them any kind of legal nod here. Yes.
Sure.
And not just judges and lawyers, but business people and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, but this is saying that's not even that. I love that thinking that you're going to you have to be of a certain ilk if you're going to work for me. Okay, got it. This is everybody. They're saying they're going to boycott every graduate or undergraduate of Columbia, and they've sent this letter to the president saying we're not going to even consider your graduates, whether they were huddled underneath their bed in the protest and wishing it would go away.
Right. I don't agree with that at all, but the thing that I think I do know is that if you are arrested, you have a record, and your employer is well within their rights to check your record before they hire you.
Absolutely. I mean, Rogette, I'm sure you're in agreement with us on this. I mean, that it seems to be overstretching a bit. It seems to be judicial overreach to be able to do something like that.
It is, but I'm not surprised. Kind of going back to my little joke in the beginning, we were talking about freedom. This is a good example. And this also brings us back to, again, how things were during the Trump years. You disagree with me? Boom, you're out. Where is that freedom? Just a reminder.
Well, you raised another issue about you disagree with me, you're out. Let's talk about is our House Speaker Mike Johnson going to be out, Jeffrey? I mean, you disagree.
So.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is not happy with him, and what do you think? You think she's going to move against him?
Yeah, I don't think so. The impression I've gotten from our own Congressman, Scott Perry, is that he doesn't want to go down. This is just my take. He can speak for himself, but that he's not going to go down that road. I think that, this the second time around with this.
Yeah,
They don't want to keep doing this and doing this. And I think that, and I've talked to a couple members, I think that they feel that, enough is enough of all this. And all it winds up doing is damaging the Republican conference in the House. They need to be getting things done instead of doing this. And so I
seems a
don't know how
little
much
silly.
further this is going to go.
Yeah, it does seem a little silly. Am I right, Rogette? Though, do you like seeing all this happen? It may be the Democrats have to come to his aid.
Rogette is paying them.
Now.
You saying I have hush money, Jeffrey?
Pretty good, Rogette.
That was very good. It's very good. And you don't even demand that they strip.
Okay, referee. That's okay, guys. You guys are on it today. So the point
If
is,
this wasn't an election year, I would say maybe, but there's too much to lose this year. So
really
I have to agree with Jeffrey on this one.
but the problem is sometimes they're not controllable. When you have what do you call a rebel? Let's be kind and say that she's a rebel. She's just sometimes you can't control those kinds of people. They simply don't color in the lines, right?
In the long years ago, I knew a little bit. I knew Trent Lott, who was a longtime congressman from Mississippi. He'd worked on Capitol Hill before he got elected. Eventually he went on to be the senator from Mississippi, but he was in the leadership. And my then boss, Congressman Bud Schuster, ran against him for a leadership. I think it was chairman of the House Republican Study Committee, or one of those jobs, and lost to Trent Lott. But Trent Lott, somewhere along the line, I remember him saying that leading House Republicans, and I imagine you could apply this to Democrats, is like herding cats.
Yeah.
And I think that is a fairly accurate description.
Absolutely. Well, look, let's move on to one of the final issues that I think we've just got to, and you brought this to our attention, Jeffrey. We've got another challenge to the mail-in balloting or whatever. The Republicans in Pennsylvania, they're bringing up two petitioners, Faith Ginzer and Frank Mattis, who are trying to force the county to allow, what county is it? I forget which one it is.
Butler County.
All right, to allow, so tell us about what's going on there.
Well, what they're doing is, it's this whole issue of when you mail in your ballot, if you haven't done it correctly, in essence, whether you get a second shot at correcting this.
Correct.
And I'm guessing, I guess that I'm correct here, that Butler County is saying yes, and the Republican National Committee is saying no, that you've done it. If you've done it the wrong way, you're not, your ballot is not being cast according to Pennsylvania law. So there is a lawsuit on this pending from the Republican National Committee. I have absolutely no idea how that's going to work. I mean, I would agree with the Republican position on this. I mean, I just think this is sort of a sacred deal, and it's important, and you need to learn how to do it and do it correctly.
Right. But especially if you're going to do it by mail, right? But
how that is going to play out, I have absolutely no idea here.
I mean, Rogette, would this change the result of that? I mean, I would think Republicans mail-in voters are just as likely as Democrat mail-in voters to get it wrong, or simply because more Democrats have done mail-in, they think they'll reduce the number of Democrat votes. What is this about?
Well, more Democrats definitely vote by mail. Although I have noticed, at least here in Pennsylvania, the Republican Party has started a campaign to try to push more Republicans to vote by mail as well. I'm of the mind that every vote should count. Some of these votes aren't being counted. It's not that the ballot isn't filled out correctly, but maybe they forgot to put the date on the outer envelope.
Right.
Maybe they didn't sign the outer envelope. We're talking little things like that, not that they voted for more individuals than they should. So I'm of the mind that people should be contacted, if not to fix their ballot, at least be able to go to the polls on election day and fill out a provisional ballot or something of the sort so that their vote their vote counts. I'm a
What
firm
I
believer, because even now, say I want to vote by mail, change my mind, I can go to the polling place now, turn my ballot in and vote there at the polls. Or say I applied for an application, I didn't get my ballot, I can still go to the polls, vote provisionally, which gives them a chance to check to make sure I didn't already vote. And then my vote counts. So we already have mechanisms in place to make sure people's vote counts. And that should continue.
One of the things I found interesting in this case, it says, I'm reading from the article, the May 7th intervention is the RNC's 84th active case across 25 states. So this is not a one-off here. This is ongoing around the country. And if they've got 84 active cases in 25 states and it's only May, I have a feeling we're going to be seeing more of this.
But they've been trying this for a while, and it hasn't really gotten anywhere. I mean, they've been trying this since the phony election or whatever, right? Since January 6th. So it hasn't gone anywhere. And honestly, I mean, let's just talk about this. Don't you want people to have a little grace? Don't you really want people to vote and to be able to, and if they make a little mistake, not a hard, shouldn't you just say, hey, you want to change this? You need to.
The problem, Joyce, I think, is the age-old human nature, particularly in our beloved Commonwealth, where there's too much funny business that has gone on over the years, long before Donald Trump was on the scene. I mean, I've gone back, as you know, and looked at different elections. I mean, 2012 and 2008, and we have people, I think they're still in jail, former Congressman Mickey, what's his last name? I forget at the moment, who was a Democratic committee man in Philadelphia, and the U.S. Justice Department threw him in the slammer for voter fraud. And then the judge of elections that he paid off to do the voter fraud. There's nothing new about this. This has been going on forever. So my point is, fix the system.
But that's what I'm saying. From what we're hearing from Al Schmidt, former as a Republican, where the system has been fixed, or it is functioning. That we have decent people doing these elections, and we should have confidence in them. We shouldn't keep just tearing them down. They think they have these primary elections. They said went quite smoothly, right, Rogette? I mean, I didn't hear any horrible things happening.
Yes, this is an argument it's just not founded. And I just want to remind people that in Pennsylvania, it's the counties that run the elections, that sends the election results to the state. The majority of the counties in Pennsylvania are Republican. So for the Republicans to say that the elections are rigged, that's basically saying the Republicans are rigging their own election. I used to say that about our Congressman Scott Perry. He said that the 2020 elections were rigged, that it was a false election, but only went with Trump. I mean, he won. So does that mean it was false for him too?
Well, that is a good point, Jeffrey. I mean, it is Republican people who are controlling these, and honestly, they're decent folks from what we're seeing. I mean, I don't see any reason to castigate them as crooks or criminals or trying to rig anything. I mean, right? I mean, why would we do? In the past is one thing, but present is another.
Well, I'm holding in my hands, this is somebody that I know, the reporter Molly Hemingway, who's a senior editor at the Federalist, and she has written this book, Rigged: How the Media, Big Tech, and the Democrats Seized Our Elections. She has chapter and verse in here about what happened in Pennsylvania. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm just saying
I got to get that book. We got to get that book and get her in here and talk to her.
Her last name is Hemingway, like Ernest.
Like Ernest. Rigged. And it's a big, thick book, too. I can see. I don't know.
Yes.
It's going to take me a while to get through that one, but we'll try.
Well, you know, Joyce, you can start by just going to the P section, and there's a section for Pennsylvania, and there's a section for, yes, indeed, Philadelphia.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, all right. So we've kind of examined everything, but except there's one little thing I think that is just so interesting here, this race. And we have two Black men running against each other, right, for an important post. Treasurer, state treasurer, and that we've got it's Malcolm Kenyatta and Tim DeFore, both great individuals, right? Am I right? Decent folk, I
Yes.
mean, really will galvanize the community, and younger, right? Young
Right.
people coming out. So talk about that. Why should I vote for DeFore over Kenyatta? And will we see, especially Rogette, like that, will we see African American or people of color wondering, well, why can't I vote for the Republican? Anybody can take that one first. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rogette.
Well, I think, the current Auditor General, Tim DeFleur, will obviously have a record to stand on. A lot of people, because of his name, he doesn't even know he is African American. People judge people based on their names in that sense. He was a county controller here in Dauphin County. But what has he done? One thing we can say about Eugene D. Pasquale when he was Auditor General, he was creative, he was innovative, he did things with that office. He put it on the map. And that's something that Malcolm Kenyatta will do when he gets elected, is that he will think outside the box with that office and do things that we don't see now. It kind of just went back to the same old under the current Auditor General. So in this race, I think personality and policy will play a part.
Personality and positive.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, you want to weigh in on this?
I think that's right. Yeah, first of all, let me just say, as a general rule, running for the so-called row offices in Pennsylvania is
Yeah,
is
it's tough.
is a very difficult thing to do. Literally, in our day and age, unless your last name is Casey, you've got a tough row to hoe here. That said, I will say, and I know Tim DeFore, I like him, and I hope he wins. I will say this: a friend of mine took me to over to the House side of the Capitol the other day. There was a hearing on, of all things, puppy mills in a House government committee. It was awful. I was glad I was there. But into this meeting, as it was ongoing, other legislators would pop in. They've all got things to do. In came Malcolm Kenyatta. I'd never seen him before. Wow, he's got a lot of presence. And I think that whether he wins or loses, he's got a future in this state. And it will be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, yeah, it's one of those races I think that we're going to like. Clearly, we're going to be watching the race, Perry and Janelle, right? I mean, that is going to be a pivotal race, I think, for people to watch. And don't you think the Democrats have a chance here, Jeffrey? Don't you think? A little bit?
Sure. Sure. I
Yeah.
think Democrats have a chance. The thing that I think is the unknown, and I'm just drawing on my own experience here, and maybe I've said this before. In 1980, various Republican parties around the country were having a real difficult time getting their so-called A-list candidates to run for the U.S. Senate. And so they wound up nominating the B or C list candidate. Well, nobody saw the Reagan landslide coming. It came, and in the morning, all these B and C candidates woke up as United States senators-elect. I don't know if that kind of thing is going to happen, but my point is, when that kind of thing does happen, that can pull in all kinds of people running for all kinds of offices up and down that could affect our Senate race with Senator Casey and Dave McCormick. It could affect Scott Perry, the state legislature, et cetera, and these row offices. So I think it's too soon to say, but I just know that kind of thing has happened in American history. And wow, when it does, the effects are interesting.
Well, we are living in extraordinary times. I think upon that we all agree. These are not usual times, and anything could happen, as we have said over and over and over again. So I am going to use this opportunity to once again laud you both for your wisdom and your very pithy comments, and you've kept it interesting. And as you look ahead for the week ahead, do you see anything out there we need to keep our eyes on, Jeffrey?
Oh, I think the Trump thing, I think that's
the trial. Okay.
Whether we like it or not, I think that's going to be dominating the news without question.
Rogette, what do you think?
I would agree with that. Yes.
Okay.
And then, of course, the war, because that's going to be unexpected. You don't quite know what's going to happen with that.
Good point. The war could also spur more street and you know,
Very
Jeff
good
brought
point.
up a good point too. If anybody dies, if any of these students, you know, that could change the whole thing. So we pray that that doesn't happen and that we want peace to reign everywhere.
There are a
So
lot of balls in the air at the moment,
yes.
and any one of them could, have an unfortunate situation.
And we've seen it before. So with that, I'm going to thank you both. Once again, I'll see you next week. And you know what I think we're going to do next week, guys? I think we're going to have one of our young people from Next Gen PA come on and tell us what young people think. And
Wait,
you will be
wait.
able
Uh,
to learn from them.
Are you suggesting that Rogette and I are not young people?
Well, I'm certainly not suggesting that I'm not young. So we will see. We will see you next week. Bye bye,
All
guys.
right,
And thank you
bye-bye.
all for tuning in. Bye bye.